Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific. I'll say it again. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific. We have a really excited audience, which I love. Hopefully those sitting on their couches at home watching are also equally excited. We're going to get started. Tonight, we are here for a First Wednesday. My name's Jenny Dean. I'm the Aquarium's Vice President of Education and Conservation. It's my pleasure tonight to be your host. We're here every First Wednesday, thank you, for these wonderful programs, in part because of some of our sponsors. So you see them, or saw them, up on the screen. Let's give them a particular shout out. They include Stephen and Brenda Olson, the Osborn and Roork Charitable Trust, and the Courtyard Marriott Long Beach Hotel. Wonderful to have that support. Yeah. You're in the Pacific Visions Theater tonight. We're hoping that you could silence your phone so that everyone gets the same wonderful experience. And tonight we're talking about fish, and more specifically, the California Grunion. Our speaker is from just down the road. Jim DePompei is the programs director at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium in San Pedro. And in that role, he oversees education programs and community events that help promote marine conservation. So very similar kind of ethic as the Aquarium of the Pacific here. He is an avid supporter of making science and outdoor experiences fun and accessible to everyone. And he will be inviting you to participate in some of his outdoor experiences tonight. Tonight, he's focusing his talk on the field work of monitoring Grunion, their behavior, their populations, those kinds of things. And he will identify some of the opportunities that come up. So Grunion are seen at very specific times in the year, and we can predict them because it's tied to the moon and the tides. So he's going to tell you a little bit more about that. When he's not doing amazing things at the aquarium, he is an avid outdoor person, perhaps obviously, and he has a wonderful wife who's here in the audience with us, and 3 dogs, and they all do those outdoor things too. So it's my pleasure tonight to have him join us. As a reminder, the program is an animated conversation up here, followed by a Q&A, and then a reception outside. So let's join me in giving Jim a hearty round of applause and welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm very excited to be here tonight. My name is Jim. I work at Cabrillo Aquarium, just down the street, and I invite you over there as well to come and join us at one of our Grunion runs, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, what's available. So let's talk about Grunion, right? My favorite fish, maybe your favorite fish. They're not that big. That would be scary. They're about yay big or so, right? Maybe 7 inches long or so. So why do we spend so much time talking about Grunion fish? Why are we going to learn about this one particular fish? It seems like it looks like a bunch of other fish that are in the ocean, right? So we are going to be researchers tonight. And myself and my team, we are dressed like the premier researcher that did a lot of the early research on Grunion fish, Dr. Boyd Walker from UCLA, who we think may have worn something like this. We're not quite sure, but we're just going with that. So you're gonna come on a journey with us about research. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Grunion. I want you to yell at the top of your lungs. Well, wait. One thing, not just anything. When I say the word Grunion, what do you think of? Run, fish. Okay. Huh? Okay. Run and fish. Okay. That works for me, right? Okay. So Grunion have been a part of our pop culture for a very long time. Maybe when you would invite someone down to the beach to see the Grunion, maybe you knew there might be some fish, maybe you thought there might not be some fish, and you just wanted to go to the beach at night, right? And tell your parents where you're going. It's not Grunion season. Hey, we're going to the beach to look at Grunion, right? Just an excuse to get out of the house, right? Or maybe you heard about it on television or a movie or some kind of documentary or on the internet or something like that. But did you know that you are in such a unique location that you actually have the opportunity to go see these fish? You can watch them on all these different things and hear about how Grunion have inspired different types of art and different types of food stylings and different types of music and things like that. You can also have the opportunity to be inspired with those people as well and go see them on the beach. So let's do a little research about Grunion. Let's do a little talking about Grunion. Let's find a little bit about Grunion. You can learn about Grunion many different ways. You can take a program on Grunion, right? You can come to a wonderful lecture at a beautiful institution like the Aquarium of the Pacific about Grunion as well. You can come to the beach. You can take part in one of our programs. You're going to do something very similar to this tonight. You are going to be hatching your own Grunion fish tonight. The Grunion fish that you will be hatching tonight, we will return to the ocean this evening when we go back to Cabrillo. So we'll all get an opportunity to take part in that tonight as well. So the research continues. You're going to actually actively see some of the things that we talk about tonight right before your very eyes. Cabrillo has been a part of Grunion for over 75 years. We started our Grunion Run programs. John Olguin started them in 1950. This is our 75th year of Grunion programs. And his vision was to connect the community to nature. That's exactly what Aquarium of the Pacific does. That's exactly what we do across the way as well. We connect our community with nature. And how we do it is different. How we do it doesn't matter. It's that we're doing it. And that's the important thing. And Cabrillo started these programs in 1950 and became such an important part of who we are that it's part of our logo is the Grunion fish. So when you think Grunion, think Cabrillo, or when you think Cabrillo, think Grunion, right? It's part of almost like our DNA, right? Okay. So Grunion Run, you guys said it, Grunion Run. You got to go to the beach. Maybe it's a full moon, maybe it's a new moon, and there's going to be a bunch of fish flopping on the beach. If you had no idea what this was and you went to the beach and saw this, you'd probably think, oh my God, what's going on, right? Well, the fish are doing this on purpose. All right. So, in the voice of Dr. Boyd Walker, we're going to learn a little bit about what's going on the beach.
Certain nights during spring and summer months, sandy California beaches are the scene of a spectacular display put on by small silvery fish called Grunion. By the thousands, these fish come out of the ocean to lay their eggs in the wet beach sand. Of all the fishes in the world, only Grunion show such spawning habits. There is nothing very unusual about their appearance. They are just small silvery fish about 5 to 6 inches long. However, their breeding habits are most unusual. In addition, they can live out of water for over 20 minutes, much longer than their close relatives.
Okay, one of the few fishes that actually comes out of the water to lay its eggs. The only one that we have that digs into the sand. So let's watch this video right here. So here we have a female Grunion fish digging in the sand. We have male Grunion fish wrapping around her. The female's laying her eggs, and the males are releasing milt, which is going to slide down the side of the female and fertilize the eggs below the sand. This happens every night during a Grunion season. What does she do when she's done? She wiggles her way out, exhausted, maybe, and then back into the water. And you can see the water will eventually come up and send her back into the ocean. That was just one female out of thousands that can come up a night. One female can come up multiple times a season, and she can lay up to 3,000 eggs a night. So this would be a Grunion Run. So if you just had a camera and you came down a Grunion Run, you can see the eggs in the sand right there, right below the sand. That's eventually going to be covered with sand and buried. We'll talk about for how long. The waves are coming, adding more Grunion every wave. Mostly males on the beach. There's going to be a higher percentage of males than females on the beach. Males are also the first ones to show up, you know, just like every party. And they're waiting for the females. This would be a Walker 5, and we'll talk about what that means. But that would be a very good Grunion Run. Lots of females digging in the sand, lots of males enjoying their time there. Okay, so we saw the Grunion Run. Now we want to learn a little bit more about Grunion. There are actually two species of Grunion fish. We have the California Grunion and we have the Gulf Grunion. The California Grunion is the primary species, and then the Gulf Grunion is the subspecies of the California Grunion. They're very similar. However, the Gulf Grunion lives in the Gulf, and the California Grunion lives along the coast of California. The range is very, very small, so they're very unique and very localized. The California Grunion is from about Point Conception down to lower Baja, but really right about Ensenada. So from Point Conception to Ensenada, that would be the largest concentration of California grunion. There are now pockets of grunion that are running up in San Francisco and Tamales Bay as well. These grunion are slightly smaller than the ones that we have here in California, or Southern California, and then the Gulf grunion are slightly larger. The Gulf Grunion run mostly at the upper part of the Gulf, but they do extend down a little bit. The highest concentration will be at the upper part of the Gulf. So this is the same, there's a subspecies, which means something separated them, and then they evolved in separate locations. So anywhere from 300,000 to 4 million years ago, these grunion fish were separated, and then they've evolved simultaneously in different locations. So they're slightly different. They're different enough to be a subspecies, but they're very closely related. The Gulf grunion still comes up out of the water, but doesn't actually come all the way out of the water. It stays in the swash zone. So the California grunion still wins the prize of being the only fish that comes all the way out of the water, digs in the sand, lays 3,000 eggs, and then survives afterwards to come back multiple times a season, and they can live up to 4 years. So there's a lot of other fish that might come out of the water to lay their eggs, but they end up dying, like the capelin in the Arctic and the Antarctic. Or you have the night smelt that doesn't come all the way out of the water. They just lay their eggs on top of the sand, and then the waves wash it back in. So California grunion, you get the prize. All right, let's move on. Yeah, let's hear it for the California grunion. California, right? We're so cool. Okay, so here we go. Point Conception to middle of Baja. So they spawn mostly in Southern California. That's the most abundant location where they spawn. They require a sandy beach. So you can't see them on a rocky beach. You need to go to a sandy beach. They are protected by California Fish and Wildlife. There are open seasons and closed seasons. We are in closed season right now, which means you can only go observe the grunion. You can't touch the grunion, can't take the grunion. And even during open season, you can only catch them with your hands, and you need a fishing license. You can't use any tools. You can't dig a hole. You can't, collect $200 when you pass go. No, you can only collect them with your hands. So lots of threats for them as well, including over-harvesting from humans, but also, with the change of the climate, we're seeing a shift in their locations, which is why we're starting to see them up north in San Francisco. Overdevelopment of beaches, raking of beaches, and things like that all have an impact on the population of grunion. We're going to talk about how we know how the grunion population is doing as well. So here's the thing. You want to go see the grunion. When do you go see the grunion, right? Because sometimes you go out to the beach and you're like, there's no grunion here. This doesn't exist. So you need to know the moon cycles. Whoops, and that's the wrong button. Sorry about that. You need to know the moon cycles. So full moon and new moon. So 1 to 3 days after the new moon and the full moon during the months of March through August, after the peak high tide of the evening is the best time to see the grunion fish. You have to go to a sandy beach. You can't go to the rocky shore. And on that sandy beach, if it's a narrow sandy beach, you're more likely to see the grunion than a wide, expansive sandy beach, because you could be in one location and the grunion could be running 100 yards away and you wouldn't see it because it's nighttime. So there's a lot of variables that go into this, but we know when they're going to be running. And this will be a constant. So every March through August, 1 to 3 nights after a new moon or a full moon, and right after peak high tide, that's your opportunity to go see grunion. Oh, on a sandy beach. That's your opportunity to go see grunion. So, do you have sandy beaches here in Long Beach? Yes. Do you have sandy beaches in Orange County? Yes. Do you have sandy beaches in San Diego? Yes. Los Angeles? Yes. So all of those are potential opportunities for you to see a grunion run. If you'd like to come to Cabrillo on one of our organized grunion runs, we'd love to have you there as well. I can't guarantee you'll see grunion, but we plan those on the most likely evenings, and you now probably know what those evenings are going to be. 1 to 3 nights after the new moon or the full moon, right after peak high tide. That's when we plan our programs. Okay, once those eggs are in the sand, so here you have a bunch of grunion laying their eggs right here. The eggs are in the sand for 10 days. What happens 10 days later? The next moon cycle. Okay, so not only do they know when it's high tide, not only do they know when it's a full moon, but they have evolved to have their eggs incubate for the right amount of time so that when the next moon cycle happens and the tide is high enough to reach those eggs, they're ready to hatch. There's no chemical reaction when that egg hatches. It's the jostling of the water as it removes the eggs from the sand. That's what gets them to hatch. And here's the other cool thing. So on the falling tide, the tides add sand to the beach. It buries the eggs. On the rising tide, it's erosional and it takes sand away from the beach. So not only, this is absolutely incredible. So the eggs get buried under enough sand so that they can incubate, and then as the moon cycle changes and the tides end up reaching where those eggs are, they're eroding the sand away. So good job, Grunion. It only took, who knows how long. Scientists actually don't even know how long they've been around, but we know that they've been in, they found them in the midden sites of first peoples here in California for thousands of years. So obviously thousands of years, probably millions of years they've been around. Okay, how do we know there's a Grunion Run? Well, if you don't see the Grunion Run, there's actually evidence you can look for on the beach. And what you want to do is you want to look for these little holes and wiggle marks at the high tide mark, okay? And that would tell you that there was a Grunion Run the night before. Why would this be important? Why do we want to know if there was a Grunion Run the night before or not? Well, this lets us know population of Grunion, right? If you see the night after a potential Grunion Run a lot of holes in the sand, then you know that was a pretty good Grunion Run, which means the Grunion are coming up multiple nights after the new moon or the full moon, which signifies that there's a number of Grunion that are coming up every night. And we can catalog that and put that into our data stream to have an idea of what the population is like. Underneath that, about a couple inches down, is where you would find the Grunion eggs. And the female will leave a little clutch of eggs. These eggs are bright orange when they're first laid. And then after a couple of days, those eggs, the bright orange is the yolk. The fish begins to form inside of the egg, and it becomes camouflaged in the sand. And you will see that tonight when you get your little jar of sand. Look for the eggs, and I bet you can't see them until we add the water, and then pop, they pop right out. One female can lay up to 3,000 eggs a night. She can come up about, I think scientists said 10 to 15 times a season, so you can do the math and figure out how many Grunion one female Grunion can lay. Do you think all those Grunions survive? No, unfortunately, right? But what happens to them, right? They get eaten. So they're part of the food chain, right? So that's very important as well. These little Grunion fish are an important part of the food chain, and we see a lot of their predators when you come out to a Grunion Run. Not only seeing predators of the fish on the beach, but you're seeing predators of the baby fish that are swimming around where the adult fish are right then and there as well. So it's very dynamic and very fun and just cool to be on the beach at night. But we're talking about eggs, so we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so day one, day two. You start to see the fish forming on day two. It's pretty quick here. This is all the yummy stuff that the fish is eating as it's forming. Day 3 to 5, you can start to see blood flow. So blood flow here. Here's still the yolk, and you can start to see the heart right here as well, the heartbeat on the fish. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do our best to get some eggs under a microscope, so with a TV screen, so you can see the heart beating of these little baby fish. Days 6 and 7, the fish really begin to form. You get to see the eyes. They have personality now. You can anthropomorphize them. You can name them. You can have them grow up, right? At day 9, they're ready to hatch. It's the full fish all wrapped up inside that egg, waiting for the water to come so that it'll jostle him out of the egg and he can swim free and and grow into an adult Grunion fish. And here we go. Here it is. Dr. Boyd Walker, tell us what's happening.
Now we're going to show you a close-up of the Grunion eggs as they hatch. Don't blink your eyes or you won't see them hatch. Watch the egg at the tip of the arrow. In case you missed the hatching, here is another chance.
In slow-mo.
In a fraction of a second, the Grunion twists and pops out of his shell tail first.
And what about these other guys? Are they just going to chill? No, when that grunion fish starts swimming around and knocks into those eggs, they begin to hatch as well. Once you have one grunion fish hatching, all the rest of them start to hatch, and they'll eventually just, it'll look like popcorn popping. Just pop, 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 all these little baby fish coming out of their eggs. And that's what happens along the coast as well. I can only imagine what it must be like to be in the water when all millions and millions of these little baby fish just start hatching out of the sand in the swash zone. Must be absolutely incredible. So the whole life cycle right here, drawn by one of our volunteers at the aquarium here. So it starts, oh, no, that's the wrong button again, sorry. It starts with the eggs, newly hatched larvae. We get juvenile. They're not quite that big, but they're, you know, maybe an inch or two or so. And then the adult grunion, and then they mate, and then they make more eggs, and the whole darn thing just perpetuates and keeps going. So they lay their eggs, they grow. How do you identify them? Because it looks like every other fish in the ocean, pretty much, right? That looks like a smelt to me. Well, as a matter of fact, it's related to top smelt and jack smelt. These are silversides, though not technically a silverside, but we call them a silverside. But how do you identify them between the jack smelt and the top smelt? Well, when they're very small, it's very difficult to. But as adults, there's two ways. You can look at the fins, where the fins are located, and here we have our ID book right here for the California grunion, where the fin is located, because you can totally eyeball that, right, when you're on a boat, right, where those fins are located. And the other way you can do it is you can open up the mouth of the fish, and if there are teeth in the mouth, it's not a grunion. If there are no teeth, that's a grunion. So two ways to identify it. So difficult to identify it from the smelts. But scientists go out, and when we collect fish, we identify the fish. And the thing that gets us the most is that we don't find grunion in the ocean. They don't take bait. You can't catch them with hook and line. They don't get caught in the nets. So where do they go? Well, there was some research done, and in bays and harbors, they did some seining and netting and things like that and found juvenile grunion. So we were able to identify those juvenile grunion from the other smelt. So it's theorized that the juveniles stay close to where they are hatched for a couple of months. So they begin, when they first hatch, they stay along the beach for a couple of days, maybe a week or two, as they grow. And a grunion, like the grunion you hatch tonight, will double in size in an hour. So they grow relatively quickly. Once they reach a certain size, they move into bays and estuaries. They school, and they live in those bays and estuaries for a couple of months. And at about 4 months old, they leave the bays and estuaries, and we have no idea where they go. We don't catch them with sardines. We don't catch them in nets with smelt and things like that. They're out in the ocean somewhere, but we don't know where. So the only time we know where the adults are is when it's mating season. And they usually generally stay right along the beach area, especially at full moons and new moons. You'll see all the pelicans and cormorants and grebes, and they're all like hanging out feeding on the fish during the day because they're all just kind of bait balling right in that area. But other than that, we don't really know where they are. So if you don't know where the adult grunion go, how do you keep track of their populations? How do you know how their populations are doing? Well, that's a great question. So first things first, let's try and theorize where these fish might go, right? We could tag them. That's a great idea. If you tag them, this fish gets eaten by just about everything in the ocean. So you end up following a sea lion or a pelican or something like that, right? So that's not going to work, unfortunately, and it's a lot of money. So what else can you do? Well, there are these cool little things in the ocean and everywhere called parasites. And so what scientists are doing is we're looking at, I'm not looking at this. They are looking at the parasites on the fish. Parasites can be location specific. And if you have a high concentration of a certain species of parasite, that will tell you that that animal spends a lot of time in this one particular area. And so what it's looking like, or what the data is showing us, is that these fish tend to stay in general sections of Southern California. So our like Long Beach, LA grunion fish, like they'll share the beach here, right? But they don't really go up to Santa Barbara. They don't go down to San Diego. You got your San Diego grunion, you got your LA, Long Beach grunion, you got your, northern coast grunion, maybe off of Santa Barbara, So you got the grunion that kind of stay in an area. But still, we don't know where they go in the ocean because we need to find out more types of parasites that are in the ocean. If we can figure that out, then we might be able to figure out where these Grunion fish go in the ocean. So there's no evidence that they come back to the same beach where they're born at, but there is evidence that the Grunion fish generally stay in an area of Southern California. So like ours might go up to the South Bay as well, So that's really interesting. So if there's anybody out there looking for an idea for a PhD in marine biology, this is a good one, because not only will you get to identify new species of parasites, but you can tell me where the Grunion go, and then I can say that when I give my lectures on Grunion fish. Okay, so how do we count Grunion fish, right? You can sit there, if you're a marine biologist, you know all about quadrats, right? So you can throw a quadrat down, you can try and count all those fish on the beach. You guys saw the video of those fish on the beach. They're not hanging out in one area, they're flopping all over the place. So what do? So, Dr. Karen Martin, Dr. Suzanne Lorenz-Miller, and Mike Schad came up with an idea. Who are these people? That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Dr. Karen Martin is the premier Grunion researcher right now. She is up at Pepperdine University. She runs the Grunion Greeter program. It is a fantastic community science program that you can get involved in to measure the amount of Grunion that come out onto the beach. So if you like, going out to the beach and seeing Grunion fish at night, you could add what you see to her data stream so that we have more information about populations of Grunion. So Suzanne Lorenz-Miller, Dr. Suzanne Lorenz-Miller, she was a former director of the Aquarium, and Mike Schad was also a former director of Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, all of them heavily involved in Grunion research. So they came up with the idea of the Walker scale, named after Dr. Boyd Walker, right? Which is who we're maybe dressed like. So how do we measure that? We look at the beach. You go to a beach and you watch the Grunion come out of the beach. There are 5 different levels of Grunion, potential amounts of Grunion on the beach. Wrong one. You have a Walker 0, which would be obviously no Grunion. You have a Walker 1, which is a couple of males hanging out. A Walker 2, you get a couple females coming. Walker 3, some more, and then 4, and then 5. So what is the difference between a 3, 4, and a 5? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. The difference is the amount of Grunion that you see piled on top of each other and how long it stretches on the beach, right? So if you have like a large concentration of Grunion here and not a lot of Grunion over there, that would be a Walker 3. If you have large concentrations in front of you, but they're only 1 or 2 Grunion deep, maybe about 3 Grunion deep, that would be a Walker 4. If you have Grunion up and down the beach, they're piled on top of each other, there's like 5 or 6 piled on top of each other, it sounds like you're in the middle of sizzling bacon, that would be a Walker 5. And that's what I want all of you to be able to see one day. So do go out and try and see the Grunion, and one day you'll be able to see those Walker 5s because their populations are coming back. Okay, so what we found over this research was that the population was actually declining. There are things that the Grunion don't like. I'm sorry, I forgot I had this slide in here. There are things that the Grunion don't like. So if you go to a beach and the waves are kind of stormy or there's loud sounds like fireworks, for example, the Grunion will not run. If there's too many predators on the beach, like too many people in the water, lights shining on the first fish that come up, the Grunion aren't going to come up. They somehow sense and know when it's safe for them to come out of the water. How they do that, we have no idea, but they're able to do that. We call the first Grunions that come out onto the beach the scouts. And so they flop around on the beach for a little while. Maybe a bird picks up a couple of them and whatever, and then they go back into the water. And then a couple more come out, and then they go back in the water. And then finally they communicate with the rest of the Grunion, hey, it's safe to come up, and then you just start seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish come up. But they have to have that initial safe feeling, or else they're not going to come up. So any of this stuff right here will keep the Grunion from coming out of the water. Even the consistency of the sand will keep the Grunion from coming out of the water as well. We have 2 beaches at Cabrillo. We have what we call the outer beach that faces Catalina. We have the inner beach which faces the harbor. Grunion run on both of those beaches. But the inner beach has different densities of sand. So sometimes it's more compact and sometimes it's a little easier to dig in. And the areas where the sand is more compact, the Grunion avoid, either because they can't dig there or they just know that they're not going to be successful to lay their eggs in those areas. So they know, or they learn, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe it's all trial and error every time. But it sure seems like they have an understanding of their environment and an understanding of when it's safe and where the best place for them to lay their eggs would be, especially the older grunions. And that's all speculation, of course, but you'll see some grunion will lay their eggs kind of shallow, not a lot in their clutch. Because generally speaking, like the older the fish, the more eggs they're going to have, the more reproductively viable those eggs are as well. And when you find those big, nice, big, thick clusters of like 3,000 eggs, you know that was a female that maybe is 2 to 3 years old, and they have a general idea of where the best place to lay their eggs would be. So this is what we were finding with the Walker scale. You find that there is a decrease in the amount of Walker 4s and 5s. So the Walker 5s would be the dark color, the Walker 4s would be the gray color. And so using that information is, well, we don't really know what's causing this. We can generally say, climate change, yes, that's affecting population numbers for sure. Overdevelopment, yes, maybe even catching grunion. So what can we do about that? What is something that we as scientists can do to help that? Well, we can increase the closed season. So in 2023, Dr. Karen Martin, Mike Schad, and Dr. Srenz Lawrence Miller took this information to Fish and Wildlife and petitioned to add a month back onto closed season, and they were successful. So now closed season is 3 months instead of 2. And so we're only, 2025? 2 years into June being a closed season. So we don't have a lot of data yet, but we're hoping within the next couple years, we'll start seeing those Walker 5s back increase again. And then we'll know that adding an extra month onto closed season was a positive impact for this population of fish. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the human history of grunion fish. Grunion have been a major part of First Nations here in Southern California. So the Kumai would use the Grunion Run as a reason to gather on the beach, and they would invite other First Nations over to these runs as well. They would use the fish as not only a food source, a staple food source, but as something to share with the other nations and with their own people as well. So it was a reason to gather. So going to a Grunion Run is following that tradition as well. It's a reason to gather. It's a reason for awe and amazement. And during open season, it can also be a reason to feast. You can catch your 30 grunion fish you're allowed with your fishing license with your hands, and you can use that as a way to bring people together. So it's a good community thing as well. How do we know that they've been feeding on grunion for such a long time? The grunion wasn't named until the late 1800s by a scientist, and they got their scientific name and all that, and their description and all that kind of stuff. But peoples have known about it for a long time. The first conquistadors in California, they were given grunion by the First Nations that were here as well as a welcoming gift. And we found otoliths, which are the ear bones of fish, in the midden sites of First Nations up and down the coast for thousands and thousands of years. So this has been an important part of people here in California for a very, very long time. What are some of the predators other than people? Well, there's a lot, just anything, really. Anything that the grunion fits in the mouth of, that will be the predator of the grunion fish. So when you go on a grunion run, sometimes you'll see people might be fishing for halibut, because there's going to be halibut out there in the water as well. You're going to see all kinds of birds, night herons out there. We see skimmers that are feeding on some of the smaller fish that are in the water too. We've seen sea lions pop up on the beach, and even the eggs have some predators too. However, that adaptation for laying your eggs in the sand reduces the amount of predators. So when I go and I'm looking for grunion eggs to see if the grunion ran the night before, I look for birds. And if I see birds poking their beaks into the sand, I know, hey, there's probably some grunion eggs there, or a whole lot of like sandflies or something. But sometimes there's grunion eggs. So I look for that as well. So there's less predators for the eggs in the sand than there would be in the ocean. What would feed on the grunion eggs in the sand? You get like sandhoppers might feed on them. You get some rove beetles that might feed on them. There's parasites in there as well, nematodes, and birds. But for the most part, there's not a lot of predators for the eggs. Everything seems to eat the fish, though. So good luck, fish. Okay, so how did we start with the protection, right? So how did we start that protection? In the 1920s is when Fish and Wildlife said, okay, we're going to have open season and closed season. So they started off with those first 3 months of closed season and the rest of the months being open season. They opened up June right after World War II to get people back out and, engaging with nature and things like that. And then we closed back up June again in 2023 because we saw the population starting to dip. This is John Olguin at one of the first sorry, that's not John Olguin anymore. There we go. That's John Olguin right there at one of the first Grunion runs at Cabrillo Beach, connecting the community to nature. I don't know what year this picture was taken. It might have been 1948, might have been 1950, but he started doing the programs in 1950. And we all have him to thank for the programs that we do to this day at the aquarium as well. A lot of the things that we do at the aquarium are in San Pedro are because of his vision of just connecting the community to nature. And so that's what we try and perpetuate. So take is restricted by hand only. So these people are just observing, so it must have been closed season. And then a more closed season. This would be an excellent, excellent Grunion run. This would be a Walker 5 right here for sure, with all these fish all laid on top of each other. So how can you help? What can you do, right? So yes, it's closed season, but there's only a handful of California fish and wildlife wardens out there able to patrol the beaches of Southern California. There's maybe 5 for all of Southern California, something like that. So we as individuals can help. And by helping, basically it just means by letting people know, 9 times out of 10 when you let someone know it's closed season, they stop touching the fish. That's what we've seen at Cabrillo. And you can help out with that as well. You can become a Grunion Greeter. You don't even have to communicate with the person. You can call the CalTip number, and they'll send volunteers or they'll send a game warden out to wherever you are to communicate with those people that are catching the Grunion fish. The Grunion Greeter program is run by, I'll go one more. The Grunion Greeter program is run by Dr. Karen Martin. You can go online and you can learn about the program. Just go to Grunion Pepperdine. Grunion.org as well works too. All kinds of information about Grunion on there. And I highly recommend you become a Grunion Greeter if you like to go out and see the Grunion, because that'll add more data to our data sets. So let's go back to some more programs here. So John started these programs, and they were so popular that it got publicized. And so the programs continued. This is National Geographic. We've been on PBS. We've been on BBC. We've been all over the place. And other organizations now have started doing that, connecting the community to the Grunion. So now there are different programs at the Oceanarium in Venice, which is the aquarium without walls, which is really cool. Birch Aquarium offers some programs as well to go out and see the Grunion. And Cabrillo is continuing to offer programs every night there's a potential good Grunion night during closed season. We will have a program. These are the dates for our programs here, and I invite you to come on down any one of these nights to join us on the programs. However, if you're in the mood for a KCRW Summer Night Festival, Friday, June 13th should be a blast. We got KCRW coming down. They're bringing DJs. We're going to have some beer there as well, and fish. So that sounds like a lot of fun to me. And you'll get to hatch Grunion fish and have a good time as well. Grunion Greeter program. And then finally, the Beach Coalition. So Dr. Karen Martin has also communicated with lifeguards and with people who maintain beaches and things like that to educate them about the Grunion fish so that we can limit the amount of beach raking and impact, like driving on the high tide line and things like that, to impact the populations of fish. So far, this has been a fantastic coalition. We have people from Santa Barbara all the way down to San Diego that meet twice yearly and talk about not only educating each other about beach ecology, but also new ways to manage the Grunion populations and to manage, taking care of the beach during Grunion season as well. And we talked about the closed season as well, which is fantastic. And so, with that, I would like to thank you very much for coming to our lecture about Grunion at Aquarium of the Pacific. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do right now is We have a little time to do some questioning and answering. And so we have some volunteers in the audience that have microphones. So if you have any questions, we can go ahead and start taking those questions. And I'll do my best to answer them. I see one right here. Oh, okay.
Beach raking, and why is it bad?
Oh, okay, so the question is, what is beach raking and why is it bad? Well, beach raking actually in itself isn't that bad. So what it does is it moves the top layer of sand so that it adds oxygen to the sand below it, but it also keeps that top layer, it like moves the top layer of sand. And so the beach raking would be bad for grunion eggs because if you rake the beach at the high tide line during grunion season, you're now digging those eggs up and exposing them to the sun. So you're taking them out of the habitat that they need in order to incubate and survive, yeah. So that's why, like you'll see beach raking above the high tide line, and that keeps the bacteria levels down and things like that for the sand, yeah. But not during grunion season at the high tide line, yeah. Good question, yes.
Okay. I had a follow-up question on the raking because we can see it from our place. We can watch them along the ocean here. Is it a serious problem? I mean, how much are they responding to this? And can they do it in the winter, not during the March through whatever, September
Yes.
time period, and it's not a problem?
So not for the grunion eggs. So beach raking, for those of you unfamiliar with beach raking itself, if it's just to move the sand to keep bacteria levels down, that's one thing. But a lot of times beach raking is to remove all the seaweed from the beach because when people go to the beach, they don't want to sit next to seaweed because it's got, flies and things like that on it, right? But the problem with that is that seaweed that's washed up onto the beach is an important nutrient source for beach ecology. Those nutrients, the flies that are attracted to that break down the seaweed, add nutrients to a nutrient-depleted area of the beach, which then promotes growth of all kinds of wonderful phytoplankton and algae and things like that as it washes itself back into the ocean. So having seaweed on the beach is actually a really important part of beach ecology. So, personally, I don't feel like we should rake the beach at all. I feel like if you go to the beach and you happen to sit next to some seaweed, you're not seaweed, the flies aren't gonna bite you, it's all good, they'll fly around you, maybe it smells a little bit, but whatever, it's part of that beach smell. But yeah, so beach raking for grunion eggs, so during grunion season is when a lot of the beach managers will not rake the beach high tide and below, yeah, which is good.
You're not able to track individuals. How was it figured out that they live to be as long as 4 years old?
Good question. So a lot of our age, I don't have to repeat that. A lot of our knowledge of how long animals live come from captivity. So like they live 3 to 4 years. They live 3 to 4 years in captivity. So in the wild, that's the idea is that they would live a similar amount of time in the wild. Maybe less, maybe longer. I've seen 2 to 3 years. I've seen 3 to 5 years for grunion. So there's a little bit of a window. Yeah, good question.
How do you tell the difference between a male and a female?
That's a great question. How do you tell the difference between a male and a female grunion? When they're swimming and when they're on the beach, it's very difficult. The best way to do that is when you see the fish dig in the sand, that's a female. That's really the only way. Unless you want to cut them open, then you can see that too. But we want to leave them alive.
As somebody who went to Cabrillo 40 years ago as a Girl Scout to hatch these, how do you guys get them, the sand in the jars? Like, how do you pull the clutches from the beach? How do you know where to do that and how?
Magic. Okay, I will let you in on a little secret. We do look for those holes in the sand. And there's a lot of data on how to incubate them as well. And we have found at the aquarium perfect spot for us to, we only collect what we need. We're not going to collect all the grunion. And usually for a whole, the grunion eggs will last for about 30 days. So when they're, from the moment that you collect them to the moment that you have to let them go, It's about 30 days, so that's 2 moon cycles, right? So we can collect in a small area on a walker 4 night, maybe not too much far around me, about 3 buckets full of eggs, which would last us for every person that comes to the aquarium that wants to hatch Grunion, and all of our programs as well. And so just that one little area of the hundreds of yards of area where the Grunion laid. The next question would be, what do we do with those Grunion, right? Well, we have special permission from Fish and Wildlife to release those Grunion back into the ocean as soon as they're hatched. If we put them into our tank system and try and grow them, they can't go back in the ocean. Then we have to share them with other aquariums, and I believe Aquarium of the Pacific still has some of our Grunion fish in the kelp forest tank as well. But if we just hatch them, we put them back into a bucket, and we let them go back into the ocean. They don't touch our system. So that's how we do it. Yeah, good question.
Hello? Hi, I was wondering, I think if I recall correctly, you said scientists aren't sure what Grunion eat, correct? That they have a theory about it. With that in mind, and then also trying to use parasites to figure out where they go, is there a reason why they can't look at their stomach contents when they do these runs? Like, do they starve themselves beforehand, or is there just a reason they can't use that information?
Good question. So yes, we generally know what Grunion feed on, right? Especially during run times, because they're going to be feeding on the local plankton that we have off the coast. It seems as though they favor mysids. I've read a few papers about that, but it seems like whatever fits in their mouth, they're a planktonivore, so they just open their mouth up and whatever fits in their mouth they eat. Where they go deep, we don't know what their stomach content would be because it's already been digested and expelled. So that would be a good way to tell if we're able to catch some Grunion out there, if we could find out what they eat, or maybe like look at the structure of their mouth and maybe figure out, well, is there something specialized in the ocean where they go and they eat or something like that. But locally, we generally know what they eat, but when they're out in the ocean, we have no idea. Good question. Yes? Did I answer that?
I have 2 questions. Thank you very much for a really interesting talk.
Thank you.
One is, do you know if Grunion are like salmon and they come back to the same beach the way salmon would go to their spawning grounds? And the other question maybe is for Aquarium of the Pacific personnel, but are there Grunion in the tanks here?
I believe I can answer both of those questions. So every year Cabrillo, we'll raise some Grunion fish, and we share those with other aquariums, other AZA accredited aquariums. And Aquarium of the Pacific did receive some of our Grunion that we grew last year that are now adults, and I believe they're still in the kelp forest tank here. I heard they're kind of staying up towards the top, and they're schooling towards the top. The other question, and sorry, I forgot. Return to the same place. Thank you. There's no evidence that they return to the same place, but there is starting to be evidence that they have a general area where they live. So it's difficult because we can't track them, to actually track to see if they come back to the exact same beach where they were laid. But I can tell you this, and this would be an answer that would signify that maybe they don't come back to the same beach. Cabrillo Beach is a human-made beach. It was built in the early 1900s with sand from the bottom of LA Harbor. That used to be rocky shore and mud flat, no Grunion at all. They built the beach, guess what came? Grunion, right. So you build it, they will come maybe. I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good PhD project. Yeah.
So for those that do want to harvest, are they good eating?
Well, has anyone had Grunion before? Yes. Are they good eating?
Yes, they're a lot of work.
There you go. A lot of work, but good eating. Thank you, Carla. If you do a YouTube search, we've had a few culinary influencers come down to the aquarium and do videos with us, and they love it, and their followers love it. So I don't eat fish. I'm sorry. So I don't know. You can just shout it.
It says it's
Okay. I was curious if it is possible to breed Grunion in captivity, or, and if so, how would you kind of replicate those conditions in order for them to breed?
Great question. So they're really difficult to raise in captivity. They need constant movement. We tried for many, many years unsuccessfully and had to let them go because they would bang into the sides of the tanks because the tanks weren't large enough for them to school in. So you go and you have to wait till the next season in order to get more Grunion to grow and all that kind of stuff. So in the last 2 years, we've been successful enough to raise this one first population all the way to adults. And I was hoping, this is part of your question, I was really hoping that our adults that were in our touch tank at the time, in the deeper area, they weren't being touched, but they were in the deeper area of the touch tank, would exhibit that Grunion, need to jump out of the water during full moon and new moon, but they never did. So I don't know if it's something where they're connected to some, we don't know how they know that, right? So it could be something in the ocean that signifies them when it's time for them to come out onto the beach. And I don't know if these captive Grunion would be able to do that as well. That's a fantastic question and a fantastic PhD project. Let me know.
Yes, I know sometimes civilizations have taken certain animals or whatever and introduced them to other parts of the world. Has anybody ever attempted to introduce Grunion to somewhere else in the world, maybe South America or someplace?
That's a great question. I'm sure someone has, but now with good animal control and good laws about moving non-native animals to new locations, hopefully that won't happen. I don't know what a Grunion would do, but you don't want to accidentally, like bunnies in Australia or something like that, introduce something that might just have no predators and just go to town on everything else. So as far as Grunion are concerned, I do not know if anyone has introduced them into a new location. Good question.
Long Beach has an extensive break wall.
They do.
Does that serve to prevent many of the Grunion from coming in?
You would think, but it does not. Yeah. So we have, at Cabrillo, we have the inner beach, which is inside the breakwater, and we're like way, way far away from the opening. We get Grunion running on the inner beach. So they make their way into the harbor, and they find those sandy beaches. So a good spot to see Grunion is Belmont Shores, which is just on the other side of the breakwater. Or Cabrillo, you can come to Cabrillo.
Hi, thanks for the lecture. The toxic algae problem that's wreaking havoc on the other wildlife, does that seem to be affecting the Grunion too?
Great question. So far, we have no data, right? Other than empirical data, so the last 2 Grunion runs we had were Walker 4s, which were really good Grunion runs. It looks as though scientists have found that Grunion do not eat right before they run. So if they're staying in the area where the toxic algae is, they're not feeding. If they're only in that area when they're about to run, they're not feeding at that time. But if they're leaving that area and feeding before or after a run, then they wouldn't be affected by it. The other thing too is they might not live long enough for this toxic algae to affect them, or they could just be that intermediate. So the top tier predators like the sea lions and the dolphins and the birds that are really affected by that because they have those larger concentrations of the toxin in them. The Grunion could just be a holder of those toxins until something else eats them and it builds into their system and affects that animal as well. So to answer your question in a very roundabout way, we have no idea if it's affecting them or not. But yeah, good question. Sure, certainly is wreaking havoc on everything else. Okay, all right, so this is what we're gonna do. So we're gonna have an opportunity to hatch our own baby Grunion fish. But before we do that, I have to teach you how to hatch the Grunion fish, okay? So we are going to give you sand in a jar, and inside, and you're gonna have to be the motion of the ocean, okay? So we're eventually gonna line up out there. We'll give you the sand in the jar. We'll add the water. You wanna look for the eggs that pop out of the sand. I want you to see if you can find the eyes of the Grunion fish. Maybe you can start naming them if you like. And then you're going to cover the top of the jar with your hand. And this is important, okay, because you don't want the water splashing around everywhere. You're going to cover the top of the jar with your hand, and you're going to swirl in a motion like this, okay? We can all do that, right? Swirl in motion. Don't shake like this, all right? Even though the Grunion could probably handle it, they're just going to get everywhere. So just swirl in a motion like this, and I don't know, count to maybe 30 or something like that. And then look through the side. Looking through the side is important. Looking from the top, you're not going to see much. Look from the side and see if you start seeing your baby Grunion hatch. If they're hatching, stop and just watch. If they're not hatching yet, another 20 seconds, and then look, okay? All right, so swirl, no shaking. Okay, but there's no guarantee the Grunion are going to hatch unless you do the time-honored tradition of the Grunion dance. And yes, and so John Olguin started the Grunion dance back in the 1950s at the Grunion programs, and we have done them every time since. You are going to be part of a large community of millions of people that have participated in Cabrillo Marine Aquarium's Grunion dance. So I'm going to ask my good friends to come on up. We're all going to do the Grunion dance together. So the Grunion dance is a call and response. We call it a do it, do it. So I'm going to do it, you do it. Or I say what I do, you do, okay? And so what I need everyone to do is everyone's going to stand up. Everyone's going to stand up. Everybody got to stand up. Shake it off, right? 7th inning stretch, right? Almost time for beer. All right? All right. Here we go. So if I do this and say at the full moon, what do you think you do? There you go, quick learners. Okay, at the full moon. At the new moon. When the tide is high. The Grunion know it's time. To the beach. Swish. 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 Okay, female Grunion, you're going to dig in the sand. Ready? Dig, 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 dig. Okay. You're going to lay 3,000 eggs, 1,000 eggs with a whoosh. Whoosh. 2,000 eggs with a whoosh. Whoosh. 3,000 eggs with a whoosh. Whoosh. Okay, Daddy Grunion, you're going to give Mommy Grunion a hug. Yeah. Okay, dig out of the sand. Dig, 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 dig. Back to the ocean. Swish. 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 Yeah. Give yourselves a round of applause. Nice job, everybody. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to invite my friends back up again. All right. Before we leave, we have some instructions for you.
Okay, first, round of applause. Really?
Thank you.
Fantastic presentation. And dancing. Who knew we were going to be dancing tonight? That's a first, I think, for First Wednesdays. It is a First Wednesday lecture, one coming in June. June's topic is going to be Sunflower Sea Stars. We're going to have Ashley Kidd from the Sunflower Sea Star Lab presenting. This ties really nicely to some programming here with the Aquarium of the Pacific because it's Stars of the Summer here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So we'll be featuring sea stars across the institution starting Memorial Day weekend. Tonight, we have a little bit of a different way that we're doing things in that you will be exiting at the end of the night when you go to your parking location the same way that you came in. So instead of going through the main doors of the aquarium, which we normally do, you're going to exit through that side door. What you get to do now is hatch Grunion, dance, learn about the festival, and make some wonderful crafts. There's also a cash bar available. I welcome you to join me down on this level and exit and bombard Jim with questions and the other Boyd walkers around.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.